there's a recommendation to hire.
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we are taking action from the executive session.
Yes.
So we have to formally hire her. So, yes, go ahead, Crystal.
So
I'm
I
sorry.
have a resolution hiring Erica Burrell as director within the Child Advocacy Center of Warren County.
Second.
And yes, congratulations to her. Okay, now, it is after 9:10 a.m. on April 14th, 2026, and the board is scheduled for a continuation of the administrative hearing on the application of Royce Lowe OBO Tag Towers LLC in Turtle Creek Township at 1105 Nixon Camp Road for a site plan review. So at this time, I would ask any person who thinks they might testify on this matter to stand if you are able and raise your right hand, and I'll administer the oath to you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under oath to tell the truth? If so, answer I do.
I do.
Great, thank you. Next, the board will hear from our staff, Ray, about, on behalf of the zoning department, and just asking you, even though I just saw you take the oath, just please affirm that you've taken the oath.
Yes, ma'am. Ray Drack, Warren County Building and Zoning. I have been sworn in. Good morning, members of the commissioners. I see that the public is here. I also see that the applicant is present. As you indicated, we are here today to continue case 101-2025. Royce Lau, aka Tag Towers LLC. There is nothing that has changed in the PowerPoint, as this is a continuation. I would bring to your attention that at approximately 16:19 or 4:19 yesterday afternoon, I received an email from the applicant's attorney, and it is a supplemental to their last presentation. And I was able to get that to Crystal at approximately 16:30 or 4:30 yesterday afternoon. There are no questions of me.
Well, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
So, at the last hearing, we asked the question of whether there was capacity and access to a particular tower that seemed to meet largely both the capacity and the coverage issues. Have they provided us detail with regard to the access to that tower?
They have. Their attorney has extensive booklets that he would like to present to the commissioners. They seem to have addressed that particular tower as well as the request to locate on a different location that was owned, I believe, by Ohio Department of Transportation.
So they're going to address that?
That is correct. They have provided a 60-plus page document, a supplemental, that I believe that their engineer will present to you.
And is that what they provided to us yesterday late afternoon?
Yes, sir, that is.
Yes.
No, I think this is the neighborhood people, I think.
I don't think this is it.
I think that's from the actual neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what I think that is.
The applicant has those. I didn't, want to communicate with him. Their attorney will come up and present you with those packages.
Perfect, great. Then I would like to call up the applicant, please, and if you can both state your name and address for the record and affirm that you have taken the oath. Oh, you're an attorney, so you don't have to take the oath.
I did take the oath, though.
Yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Rod Carter, and I represent Tag Towers and Verizon Wireless in connection with this application for site plan approval of the wireless communication facility at 1105 Nixon Camp Road. At the February 10 hearing, the board asked TAG and Verizon 3 specific questions before we returned today, and we've done exactly that. And I apologize for the delay in getting that packet back to you, but if you look at what we submitted, we were really scrambling to get the supplemental documents in the back together, and they're kind of dated last minute in terms of what we got. So first, the board had asked about the subcarrier tower, and we've addressed that question, we believe, thoroughly. We have 3 independent sources: a licensed professional engineer from Roan Products, a senior Verizon network engineer, and Subcarrier's own failure to produce a single structural document after a formal records request. And they all reached the same conclusion, and that is that that tower isn't a viable co-location option. It's been empty and it hasn't had a tenant on it for over 30 years, at least. There's no structural documentation, and the cost to rehabilitate that tower would be more than the cost to build a new tower. More importantly, the tower is in violation of your own code that requires a mandatory 3-year inspection requirement. That hasn't occurred per the tower owner. Second, the board had asked us about the ODOT property along I-71.
It would be appropriate for me to ask questions about the first tower that you just mentioned.
Sure, and I have Mr. Lowe here who has talked to the tower owner and has secured that, so you can ask me or you can
Yeah,
ask
sure,
Mr.
and
Lowe.
if he's appropriate, we'll bring him up. But so, if I understand what you're saying about this, and is this the tower that we thought was the best in terms of providing for your capacity and your coverage needs?
Yes.
Okay, so so in other words, is your primary concern about this cost? So I'm thinking what you're saying is that because of the age of the tower and the lack of documentation as to its structural integrity, that it's not suitable for you to actually use that tower, and that to remediate it would cost more than building a new tower. Is that basically the substance of what you're saying?
That's one argument.
Okay, so would it cost more to build a new tower on that site than to build the new tower on the site that the neighbors that are here today oppose? Would your cost be similar?
Assuming we could build a tower on that site.
Well, yeah, but that's my question. My question is, assuming you can do it, would the cost be similar? So there wouldn't be a cost problem with that.
There would be no cost problem, but then there's a coverage issue,
Okay,
as is identified in the RF maps that you've requested. And we have Mr. Boleen, Verizon's RF engineer, who's going to walk you through why that coverage isn't comparable.
well, we saw those maps before. Are they different from the maps we saw previously?
He's going to walk you through it, and yes, they
All
are.
right, good, thank you.
So just so I understand, so on page 2 of your document, that's a picture of the tower in
That's a
question?
picture of the tower.
And you're saying that is actually a tower, but you're saying it's not been actually utilized as a tower for 30 years?
Hasn't been utilized as a tower for over 30 years.
So a tower exists, someone was in the business of owning that property and having rental income or what have you from a tower, and that just, there's a tower there, but no one's actually using that for that business.
Correct.
Interesting,
In violation of your code.
okay?
So, and I can't represent if we could build a tower on that property. As I stand here today, we haven't.
But it's
tower.
but it's a natural question that would arise, that if there's somewhat of a question and, you know, effectiveness of the tower in your primary location, even though there's local opposition, which is warranted, that, hey, why are you doing it here? It's mainly rural and there's woods everywhere, why are you doing it here? Just from the code, that's where Commissioner Grossman, I think, was going with this. We'd already vetted to some degree, again, we're not engineers, but just looking at your own coverage maps, that location did essentially I forget what it was, 80 to 90% of the coverage of the one you're actually proposing. And so now we're coming back and saying, well, we can't co-locate there, but then essentially the owner could knock that down, you build a brand new tower, and there is no opposition because there's already a tower there.
But who's gonna build the tower? You're jumping to an assumption. Who's paying for that tower? Who's gonna build that tower on the property that's owned by a third party?
Isn't that the business you're in?
We need permission to do that from the
Sure.
property owner.
The only question I would have about that, well, first off, as someone who wants to be a good neighbor to people, locating that location, if it largely meets your capacity and your coverage needs, the question we would have is why you wouldn't choose that. But on the other hand, there are legal issues, and I know that we have a right to ask you to look at existing towers and to co-locate or locate on those, but I'm not sure, and maybe our lawyer can tell us this, is it appropriate for us to find a new location where there was a previous tower that is not suitable, and to ask the applicant to locate, if possible, and build a tower on that location, or is that not an appropriate legal, or are we not allowed to take that into consideration, Mr. McGarry?
You are under 3.205.7A1. It lists priority of locations, and the fifth priority is on another site, another location.
So then the question would be whether or not you have actually approached the owner of that property and asked them if you could build a tower there, and I take it the answer to that is you've not done that.
We'd have to ask Mr. Rowe if he's approached that
Okay, very good, thank you.
property owner. I don't think that that property is within the search ring. And I guess my response would be that going outside the search ring, the law would hold, the Telecommunications Act would hold that that is legally unreasonable for the county to require that
Okay, so wait.
under federal law.
All right, so let me understand what you're saying with that. You're saying that you had, and we talked about this at the previous meeting, with your concentric circles and where you're searching, but we were looking at this particular tower location, and we were looking at the fact that it largely met your coverage needs that you're trying to meet with this other location, which is in the sight line of a lot of people who are not happy about it, which you're aware of. And so the question was, if it meets your coverage needs largely, even if it's not in your search range, I mean, you're the one that determines your search range, but isn't the real issue is the coverage?
I don't think that we conceded it meets our search requirements.
Well, I'm talking about
And our
your
coverage,
searches for
I think
coverage,
that,
right?
that the board made that determination.
Based on your map that you provided to us, that you had
I
already.
don't think we conceded that, so I'm stating that on this
So we can't
record.
agree to the search area. So you provide a map to this board with various locations of existing towers. And part of your due diligence, I believe, was going and looking at each one of those towers of, does it meet your need? Am I making that up, or is that what happened? That's what happened, right?
We did,
Okay,
correct.
so thank you. So that's what happened. So there's a coverage area. You, for whatever business reasons, this is not desirable, we don't get enough coverage here, this isn't available there. We get that. But this one particular tower, which I believe was the closest, but it was in your area that you had studied.
No, it was not.
Okay, I guess I'm misunderstanding a little bit of this.
I think you're trying to put words in RRF engineer's mouth to supply what is satisfactory coverage. That's not Verizon's position that this solves the coverage need. I think the board is trying to address, with all due respect, what solves that coverage need. That's not what the RF maps bear. And I think you need to have the RF engineer address that and address the coverage deficit from this property, because there's a dual argument here. The first is, you have a tower on that property that violates your code, that's been violating that code for about 30 years that you've done nothing about. The second is, that tower, even if we were to build a new tower on that property does not fill Verizon's coverage need per Verizon's RF engineer. I'm not an RF engineer. I can't address that through my testimony. I represent telecom companies, but I'm not prepared to address it.
But I think
And with
that
all
engineer
respect,
did.
I don't think that the board can address that.
I thought your engineer did address that very topic the last time.
I disagree.
Well, we'll get to that, I think, and we're not trying to put words in your mouth, but by the way, it's perfectly appropriate for us to ask you leading questions and for you to either affirm or deny or explain.
Agreed.
It's not antagonistic, we're just seeking information, and the last meeting we had with you, we were questioning you because we were looking at that tower location and its coverage, because you're, not you, but you were presenting, your coverage engineer was telling us how that particular location, which you say violates our standards for building a tower or whatever, okay, maybe it does, I don't know that, but maybe it does. But the fact is, we looked at the coverage that it was covering, and it looked like it covered over 80% of what you want to cover, and really, it appears, because we asked this question before, that, you know, you're trying to reach into the Little Miami River for somebody in a canoe, I guess, or a kayak to call out of there, and it pretty much covered most of that too.
That is an inaccurate statement.
Okay, and you know what? You might be right. But my recollection of the coverage map from this location was that it largely performed a coverage that you were trying to cover with this other location. And I'm happy to talk to your engineer about that, if that's the appropriate person, not you.
That is inaccurate as to where the coverage is. And at the first meeting, my understanding is that one of your commissioners said there is a coverage gap in this area, one of your own commissioners.
Well, of course, on the river, and.
Not on the river.
Yeah, I was talking about on the river, and I don't think this tower solves that. There's still a coverage gap from the topography of going down in, I mean, it's, again, I'm
I'm
just
sorry,
remembering
I
your
can't
map.
address coverage
Well, that's
gap
fine. Let's
issues.
just talk
I'm
to
not
your
an
engineer.
appropriate
If you're
witness
saying you
to
don't
do
know,
that.
let's bring up the engineer and look at some maps.
Okay. Can I finish with my opening statement? So second, the board asked us about the ODOT property along I-71. And we've addressed that issue as well. We have tried to get in touch with ODOT without success. Mr. Lowe is here and will tell you that he's tried since February 10th to get in touch with the person at ODOT who's responsible for telecommunications towers. He also connected with another site acquisition representative who works for Verizon, who's been trying to get in touch with ODOT on another site for the last year. We have a sworn statement from that person in the file saying that they've been trying to get in touch with ODOT for the last year and haven't done that with any success. So I don't have anything to give you on ODOT, whether they would be willing to lease that property to us.
Can I ask you a question about that? So when you say you tried to get a hold of ODOT, you're going to their office, what, in Columbus to try to get a hold of them? And you're doing it by a letter, email, a phone call? How are you doing this?
All three.
And you're saying that you.
Per the sworn statement in your,
I understand what you're saying. And you're saying that with regard to all three of those methods used by you to contact them about this site, they have ignored you?
yes.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I find that very disconcerting that a public entity like that would ignore your attempts to contact with them. Have you found that to be the case in the past with ODOT?
Yes, per the sworn statement that's in your.
Well, I mean, with other areas.
Right.
When you communicate with ODOT, they just choose not to communicate with Verizon for some reason?
On the other site that we've identified, we have another site where it's been a year and we haven't heard from them.
Okay, so now, let me back up. If you could have access to that site, the ODOT site, would it meet your capacity and coverage needs?
No. Again, it's outside the search ring. We have Verizon's RF engineer. You have updated RF maps. He can walk you through it. and he can tell you why it would not. Again, federal law says that this site, being outside the search ring is not feasible, and going outside the search ring is unreasonable under the law, the legal requirements. So we have two witnesses here today. We've got Mr. Boleen, who can walk you through those maps, and we have Mr. Lowe, who can address his extended due diligence efforts since we were here the last time with you, relative to subcarrier, the outreach to subcarrier, and the outreach to ODOT. So I would like to call, I think, first Mr. Lowe to go through what he did, and then we can talk to Mr. Boleen about his coverage maps.
And can you just state your name and address for the record and affirm that you've been sworn in?
Right. My name is Fred Lau. My address is 216 Barton Avenue, Terre Haute, Indiana, 47803. And I'm here representing Chaley Tower Consultants on behalf of TAG Towers.
And you have been sworn in?
And I have been sworn in,
Great.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Lau, I just want to, I know you testified the last time about the search ring and what you did to identify potential lessors within the search ring. But could you point the commissioners to the search ring document within the supplemental materials that we gave them today? Where is that in the tabs?
I believe it's section 5.
And there's two rings in there. Can you identify why there's two?
Yes, the initial search ring was issued at 0.4 mile radius, which is a very exacting, but in this case, because of the topography of the surrounding area, that was what the RF engineers had decided was the best, most effective for them. We contacted all the available properties in that ring, and we could not come to agreement with any of them for a lease opportunity. At that point, we do what is called an exhaust report for the RF engineers and say, look, I know where you want us, but I got nobody that's gonna give us a lease opportunity there. We have to do something with the RF design to see if there's anywhere else in that zone, in that area, where we could meet the RF coverage goals. So in that case, they did go back and look and expanded our search ring, and you can see on the next page in section 5, the expanded search area that expanded quite a bit out of the original. You see the circle there was the original ideal location for the site, and we expanded into another 2 actually, and contacted all property owners with property that was suitably sized and allowed by the ordinance by U.S. mail, and then we get calls back and try to work through the leasing options with those people. In
Just
this
so I
case-
understand your document, so we're talking about 5 in the first page, that correct?
Yes.
So you're saying, like, the item marked number 1, is that where you're proposing the tower goes?
Nope, that's the search ring.
Okay, so that just happens to be where, from an engineering standpoint, this is the perfect spot to have a tower to supplement?
The original RF engineer identified that area.
Okay, and so what would these other corresponding numbers be, like 2 and 4?
Those were the properties in that area that were contacted.
Okay, and is your proposed site in this area?
No,
All right, so your primary spot where you would like to have the tower, you're even proposing that the tower is not gonna go there because you couldn't find someone to sell it. Is that what you're saying?
that's correct.
Okay,
And the numbers correspond to a parcel of property, is that right?
Yes.
All right, and by parcel, I mean, the auditor and the recorder have recorded deeds with parcel numbers, and the areas that are kind of, you can see some lines, which I'm assuming are parcel lines. So you actually mailed out to each one of those parcels, and you tried to contact them, correctly?
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? And did you get a call back from any of them?
Yes, we actually had a lengthy discussion with the YMCA camp, tried 2 different locations on their site and could not come to terms.
What is that, what does it mean
Release.
that you couldn't come to terms with them?
That means they wouldn't agree to lease at a,
Well, is that because they were asking more money than you wanted to pay them?
So could you go to tab 7? Maybe that would help the discussion.
sorry, so
Yes.
tab 7 has,
You're skipping from my question to tab 7 because it's helpful to your answer to my question?
That'll help.
Okay.
yeah. So number, and I apologize for the numbering, because that should be, yeah. Oh, number 1 on the map. So if you look at the 3rd page in that section, you'll see the YMCA camp and an explanation of what our discussions with them on the lease terms were.
Which
So are you on
paragraph number?
section 2 of tab 7, number 10? Where it says YMCA Camp Kern, number 1 on the map?
Yes, ma'am?
So that is section 2, under section 7, it's number 10 on the list.
Very good, sorry. That's a much better way to explain where it is.
Okay, I'm confused. Are we looking at tab 6 or tab 7?
I was on tab 7, section 2, trying to answer your question.
That's the Tower Company 2013 LLC?
That one.
Which one? Oh, okay.
See where it says the detailed maps
Yes,
there.
and so that is the YMCA Camp Kern. So they just refused to engage in further discussion.
Correct. We, again, we took about 6 months to try to figure out a way. And as with all camps, they have a board. It takes a little while to work through that logic with the board. At the end of the day, the board did not feel it was the right move for the camp to go into a lease.
And then with regard to the other sites you're talking about, you said that were any of them declined because you couldn't reach terms with them, or were they declined just outright?
But to summarize, we either were not able to come to lease terms, meaning business terms that they thought was adequate, or in several instances, we negotiated with one of the spouses and the other spouse decided they were not in favor of it. So you get through some of the negotiations and then one or the other of the spouse can pull the plug on it just for personal preference. And that happened to us in several instances.
Is number 5, the tower that your lawyer described before as not being used for many years? Is that, or are we talking about a different tower? I'm looking at number 5 in Exhibit F.
Yes, which is,
That's the one.
okay.
But I thought you just said none of these sites in that circle are what you were talking about, that this wasn't the search area.
None of those are the proposed tower, that's what you asked me. The tower we are proposing is not in that circle.
No, okay.
But, okay, because this is your best circle.
That was the initial search area that was defined by the
Okay,
original RFP.
and you just said number 5 is the tower that's been abandoned for 30 years?
I did not.
In section 1. The first page.
Okay, is the abandoned tower part of this circle or not?
No,
Okay. And so then, part of this circle includes number 5, which would, I take it, be a better tower location than the one you're asking us to approve today? I'm just taking a look at number 5.
Number 5 on,
In section 1, exhibit F,
yes,
It's in the
tab 7,
circle.
number 5. It's in the circle, and
No,
that
it's-
would be a better location if you could site a tower there than the location you're asking us to
excuse me,
approve today.
I think you're misunderstanding the listings, and I
Okay?
apologize for
That's
that.
very possible.
Yeah, so number 5 on section 1 is the existing tower that you had been discussing previously in this very meeting, okay? That is not the number 5 in section 2, which is the last entry in that table, is that number 5 on the map.
Okay, well, I'm a bit confused, and you're gonna unconfuse me now. Is number 5 in exhibit F in your tab 7, the tower that we've been talking about that doesn't comply with regulations, that doesn't, you don't, hasn't been used, or is that a different tower?
That is the same tower, it's section 1 is what you're referencing.
But in section 2, the map that you showed, the number 5 there does not correspond with the number 5 in section 1.
Correct.
So what does that number 5 correspond to?
That number 5 corresponds in section 2, the site that in that table is 14, but it is indicated as
Understand
number.
why that is incredibly,
I understand completely, and I apologize for the
so,
confusion.
so that 5 under section 2 on the map
On the map with the circle,
corresponds with item number 14.
yes.
That property is owned by Ryan, Christopher, and Megan Smith.
Okay, so where is, by the way, I just wanna talk about now exhibit, this gets so confusing with me, and I'm not being, I don't wanna confuse you or me.
Right.
So now I'm looking at number 5 on exhibit F. Where is that? On your concentric circles someplace? So it's not number 5 in tab 5 in that little map area. Is it in the larger search area on the second map someplace? So on the second diagram where you expanded your search area
Right.
with a funny rhombus shaped thing,
Yes.
is that number 5 someplace in that area? We gotta work with the people next time on how to locate stuff for us, because we're just not as fast as you all.
I got it.
I'm looking at this thing, the circle is right there, that's there. Then you got this rhombus thing that's bigger, and I'm asking about number 5,
On exhibit F,
exhibit F,
section
and where
1.
is that on your map?
I cannot point you to a map that has that exact location tagged.
Oh, is it because you didn't identify it, or because it's off the screen here?
It's not off the screen, but it was out of the search area.
I mean, these are different than the maps I'd like to, Ray, do you have their original presentation? Because there was a different map that showed, this is the search area, and here are all the different potential sites inside of that.
Does that help you at all?
No, because in their original presentation, there is, including locations on the other side of I-71, even, that you had identified a couple of towers over there, they don't work, but that was the.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct,
So-
they don't work.
But that was part of your search range, I'm talking about.
No, we have to look at all the existing towers in the area and disqualify them. That's part of your ordinance, right?
But that's the search area, that's all I'm talking about. That was part, and you said it doesn't work, but.
I know, but here's the thing. When we put in the map that showed all the surrounding towers, right? The text of the ordinance reads that we're supposed to consider co-location on nearby towers. the county decided that nearby towers means anything that was in that picture, so we went to all those places as well.
All right, so now your position is, we have this small circle of this is our search area where we want to do it. None of your locations, including the one that you're under contract with, are inside of that circle, but you're not showing us the expanded search range.
We are showing you the expanded search.
Where do you show us the expanded search?
Section 5, page 2.
Okay? Okay. So, right, and you even looked at locations on the opposite side of I-71.
Opposite side
So,
of I-71,
but you
also
don't have-
south of the original search ring.
But in your expanded search area, you don't show your initial primary, or that initial circle, that is your
initial
primary
circle
target.
was the initial search area issued by the original RF engineer.
But you don't have any of the other locations marked, including the one that you're proposing.
On their search area, on the expanded search area map? Okay.
We're just trying to see
Yeah, no,
where we're talking about. I mean, this
understood.
is the expanded search. Literally, none of the locations are actually marked.
Can you point on this map where the one you want us to approve, where it exists on this map?
She's talking about the
The
second
map that you just
Yeah.
referenced to us on section 5, page 2, that shows the circle of the initial search and the expanded search that looks at all of the towers in that expanded area.
Right here. Okay.
And is your.
Yes, sorry,
That's okay.
we should have marked it. It is, I believe, right here.
Okay, so right here, approximately right here is where you are seeking the permission to be able to put a new tower.
That's correct.
And so you're saying two things, there is that there was not a site within this ideal area.
Correct.
So you cast a wider net, you identified a place here. We asked you then, we wanted the confirmation of all of the sites which you're required to look at where existing towers were. And
Correct.
that's in this area, outside of this and beyond this location.
And it looks like you
Don't dis-
specifically did this little rhombus thing to include that area that you want.
That's what you think?
No, it looks like that.
Okay, but that's not how they do it.
Okay, well, it's just
And I
curious
didn't
because it's
have
like a
this
gerrymander.
I did not have this property in mind. Well, the gerrymandering is because of the topography of the
Okay,
surrounding.
okay, that's all.
Okay, and just because they define the search area doesn't mean that anything in that area is going to work.
So and then, by the way, one of the confusing things about where I've been talking about this exhibit F, number 5, is that you talk about an address, and I take it that's the address of the owner, because that's in New
Yeah.
Jersey. But I'd like to know, just for the heck of it, where is number 5? Because you don't say that isn't proper with you just say there's a structural problem with that. But I assume that number 5 on exhibit F is
Where,
in
can
the
you
search
point to
area
that,
someplace? Is it there somewhere?
This is,
It's to the west.
It's not in the rhombus?
I don't believe it's in the rooms.
Okay, why are we looking at that then?
Because
US.
because the county
Yeah.
wanted us to
Okay.
cast a wider net on the
Exactly.
existing towers.
Okay.
So that's what we did, we tried to comply with what you had requested.
so,
And we did the exact same thing for the ATC tower that's existing on
On
the
the other
north side of
side,
I-71. We reached out to ATC both by email and verbally, and they understood why we couldn't use it because of the location and the height.
Okay, so now, looking at your original search area and your rhombus gerrymander thing, which I take it that you got
I
a
get
good
it.
reason for doing it.
I didn't do well in geometry. Can you
Okay,
explain
yeah, right.
Rhombus?
Okay, so here's my point. Where is the tower that we've been talking about in that area that you say is not structurally, regulatory-wise, whatever, proper, and you've not been able to get permission to put anything there anyway, and you have to build a new tower more economically? Where is that now?
Okay.
No, is it on this map
It's
at all?
not shown on the map, but it's in that map area to the west.
Okay, he's able to do that?
Kurt Bowling, 7575 Commerce Court,
Yep.
Lewis Center, Ohio, 43085. I have been sworn in.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Come on up.
Yeah, the water's warm, come on up.
So we understand, just so we're all, that about here is where the site in question is. And then, which is outside of this preferred search site. So in this expanded area, it falls just within there. The site then that you've discounted because of the structure of it is located where?
Wherever you want. I'll give you all sorts. Make this easy. Yeah, well, I just want to make something that we can see.
This is sub
Is that the one we're talking about?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's number 5 on section 1 of
Okay, got it.
section 7.
The different
And
font.
can you mark for us where the site in question is, where you're seeking?
proposed site?
Yes.
Yes.
About there, in those trees. Yes, sir.
Anything else?
I don't think
Yep,
so.
that's, yeah. And it's actually, obviously, it's not really a rhombus, because that's four crooked, kind of equal distance, but it looks kind of like that.
It does look kind of like a rhombus, I'll give you that.
Yes, so this is the expanded rhombus. This is the original circle, nothing in there. This is the expanded area, and then we told them to go out beyond the expanded area.
All right, so I understand, our questions aren't antagonistic, we're just trying to figure out.
I understand that I'm working through the frustration of having to communicate ideas to people who just saw this morning.
Well, because we
So-
didn't get this until
Yeah,
late
I completely
yesterday.
understand, that's why I need to be a little bit more patient, and if I
No,
reacted inappropriately.
no,
I
no, you
apologize.
didn't at all.
Okay.
Okay, that was helpful.
All right. So once you expanded the search ring, then you contacted other people in the expanded search ring?
That's correct.
And they're identified in exhibit number 7 as well?
Yes, section 2. And section 3 is the expanded. So section 2 of section 7 is the original search ring. Section 3 is the people that were contacted in the expanded search ring.
And the expanded search range includes the site you want us to approve.
That's correct.
And the reason why you got to that is because you expanded the search range from your ideal search range, which was the circle, to the kind of wobbly rhombus we're talking about.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. And primarily, if we're looking at now section 3 of exhibit 7, most all of the people that you contacted simply didn't respond to you.
That's correct.
And how did you communicate with them?
U.S. Postal Service.
All right, so you didn't do it
Then-
by certified mail, you didn't contact them
We
personally?
did do certified mail, we did do door knocks, went by the properties and tried to connect it with them.
And in
directly.
each case where you door knocked and you sent a mail to, you just simply, nobody answered the door and nobody responded to you at all, when it says no response.
Correct,
So they didn't answer the door.
Correct.
And they didn't respond to your mail.
Correct.
And typically, if I get mail from somebody like you, I'd probably just throw it in the trash, I wouldn't even look at it.
I understand,
And
and,
it wouldn't be because I wasn't interested, it's because it didn't look like anything I cared about.
right.
Do
I
you find that to
understand.
be the case a lot?
I don't know the predisposition of the people that we send letters to.
But you actually went and you door knocked on their doors, and do you do that at a certain time of the day? Like, you realize people work during the day and frequently aren't at home, or when do you do that door knock?
Yeah, we tried to do it at a time when somebody's typically gonna be at home in the
Well, like
evenings.
early evening or something like that, is that
Yes,
when you
sir.
do it? Okay.
Which, when there's a search area that we're working this hard, is a multi-day trip. You can't get to everybody's house in one single day, so we'll break it up. I've gone during snowstorms before, because a lot of people are stuck at home.
Well, the best way to communicate with me is to call me on my cell phone or to call me at my home phone line.
Correct.
Do you look up these people and find out what their phone numbers are, because those are usually publicly listed, and try to contact them that way?
We do make the attempt to look up phone numbers, because that's easier than driving to their house.
Did you do that in these cases,
I
you know?
did that in these cases, but most times, in our experience, the phone number's not correct. We get a lot of incorrect numbers on those searches.
But can you tell me with regard to the ones that you've listed in section 3, do you know whether or not you attempted to contact by phone each of these people, and did you find that it was just the wrong number, a disconnected number?
I do not know that offhand, and it would have come off of our person that did the search, on the Google searches on the names and the addresses, so. if
So,
we fa-
so
if
you've
we
got
found-
somebody that I think I know.
What's that?
I think you've got somebody on this list that not respond to you that I think that I know. And I'll bet you I can get a hold of this person.
Okay,
And that's Odor Preservation Trust. But you had no ability to contact the Odor family, is that right?
you said odor,
Uh-huh.
number 18,
That's
okay.
number,
Ron and Janet Mag are on the right.
and, well, that's even better.
They're number 23.
And
But what,
so Ron and Janet Mag are in Salem Township. And number 23, I didn't get down that far, thank you. We know them really well. In fact, I'm gonna see him today.
okay.
I can ask them if they'd be willing to do that. And and if you were looking at Ron and Janet Mag, did you look at, Mike Kilburn?
Is it on the list?
No, but he lives right next door to Ron and Janet Mag.
Okay, but there would have been a reason that we didn't select that property to contact.
I mean, they literally are right next door.
Yeah, understood,
Okay, I know, I could call Mike Kilburn on the phone right
Yeah,
now.
it's-
okay.
And Ron Mag, by the way. I could call him right now and get him.
I'm going back to your original presentation, we actually found it, good thing about having a clerk that is on it. We have your coverage maps and all that, and I think that's what we were basing our discussion on the prior time that you showed the existing coverage.
Yes.
And again, since that.
I believe
Yeah,
you're
it's not-
correct. That's why the county requested the additional tower research that we provided.
Yeah, so here was the existing, and again, you had prepared these, we didn't prepare this stuff.
Right.
So then you went through a couple of different alternatives, Camp Kern, at different center foot lines, and then reference number 5, John Pulaski.
Yes, which is the number 5 from section 1 that we.
Which
just
is the one that,
determined where it
what,
was.
we'll just call that the tower that existed that we thought would be good.
Correct.
If we're all kind of using the same terms, like
As
our
long as
attorney
we
just said.
means, as long as we means the county
Right,
commissioners, yes.
I just want to be perfectly clear, because our attorney says, for a court transcriber, this could be somewhat difficult, so I want to make sure I'm talking
Completely.
the right
agree.
things. So, in your presentation, reference number 5, John Pulaski, number 2 on the list, that's where we took a look at that map, being layman's, not being RF engineers, and said, it looks like the green gets a heck of a lot better with this location versus your coverage map as it is now, the existing coverage, which is, there's a lot of red on there. We said, this number 2 on the list, the 30-year-old site, alleviated a lot of those problems. I think that was the impetus of us saying that, and then when you went down to the site that you actually are talking about, subcarrier plus ATC, which is number 1 and number 2, that's where you're actually proposing the site. That's where you're under contract, I believe.
I don't believe so.
No.
Well, that's where you say 6371, or 3859.
Oh, I should have asked for approach, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
you're fine. 3859 south, Route 350, isn't that where you guys are proposing it?
The tower?
Yeah.
No. What is it? 1150
It's on Nixon Road.
Nixon Road?
329 South Nixon Camp? I think this is important. I mean, you guys can get frustrated all you want, but where are you proposing the tower? I mean, that should be an easy question.
1105 Nixon Camp Road.
Okay, 1105.
Yeah.
And they say that it's up in this little gerrymander, their funny shaped rhombus. That's what they say.
Funny-shaped rhombus. It's my favorite.
Right.
Is that even on your list? Can you show me, instead of me looking of?
Okay, that's the existing towers list. And additional structures, that's what that is. It's got nothing to do with the.
The one, the proposed one?
Right,
Okay.
right.
But you did you showed us one of your coverage charts, obviously,
Yes,
where,
so that you've got the existing, and then this is the proposed, and the resultant coverage from that.
oh, so that's what you're calling Camp Kernet 245?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, and that's where, okay, I'm glad we're now defining these things. So that's where we were defining that versus this. That's tower number
Yeah.
2, yeah.
This is the
Yeah.
the existing tower that,
Yeah, the 30-year-old tower. I'm just trying to get the definitions.
I got it.
So that's where we as a board said, we're not RF engineers, but when we look at that versus this, it covers a lot of the same area,
got it.
right? That's all we were saying.
I agree, that's what the commissioners had commented last time we talked about it. And
Mhm.
that's why we brought the RF engineer and did some additional maps, so hopefully he can speak to that.
Well, I'd like to see the additional map, because this is the last map on the coverage that I have. Are you saying this is no longer valid?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay. Yeah, because these
I'm
are
saying
essentially
what I was trying to make the point, your evaluation of that map as commissioners understandably is one thing, but that's not what our position is.
Understood, but you, right, you,
I'm going for the court.
Let me ask you a different question.
Yes.
Is anything, which I've been calling this irregular rhombus, but it's actually an irregular quadrilateral, okay? But any event, is anything located in this area as good as your area up there?
I could not tell you, I do not.
Well, you
have
made it your
coverage.
search area after
I
this
did
search
not
area.
make it the search area.
Okay, well, somebody did.
Yeah, the RF
With
engineers
Verizon.
did, and so I can't
so-
speak.
So my question is this: is anything within this irregular quadrilateral as good as the little area that you currently want us to approve?
And I know you want me to answer that question, but I can't answer that
Well, who
question.
can?
I do not have that data. RF probably could do a description, but he hasn't, I don't believe, run any numbers because we don't have a candidate property in that run.
But you couldn't get a hold of people that I can get a hold of right now.
Okay,
Because Ron Mag was the state representative for District 57 of the
Okay.
Ohio House of Representatives and served with Commissioner Jones.
Okay.
We know Ron and Janet Mag really well.
Good.
We also know the Oder family. And we know some of the people on this list, and I have their phone numbers in my phone.
Correct.
I'm pretty sure I can contact them today for you. Would you like us to try that? I'm not saying that they're gonna approve of this, maybe they're gonna deny it, but you got no response for this. So the reason why I'm asking you this question is that you've told me that they're within this irregular quadrilateral. I don't know whether or not they're good coverage, but apparently you identified them as people that you wanted to contact, and you didn't get a response from them, meaning that every attempt you made, you went and knocked on their door, and you tried to call them up, and you sent them a letter, and they didn't respond. But I guarantee you that we can get to these people in a relatively
And
short
if they
period of time.
respond and say they aren't interested, then
Oh, well, I agree, they're not interested. That would answer the question. But that's why I'm asking you if
if the people in that area that you've now been your expanded center are just as good as the thing that you want us to approve today that's also in that area.
And I'm telling you, I cannot answer the
Okay,
question,
but you
is
put,
just as
but when
good.
you put that search thing, which I call an irregular rhombus, or that's not
Right.
really an irregular quadrilateral, you did that for a reason, right? And that's because that search area met your needs.
RF did that for a reason. It's the RF engineer.
So I'm
defined
assuming
search area
that
for a
that
reason.
search area is satisfactory to you, if you could find a place. And you did find a place with somebody that now has said, yes, you can go there, you've got a contract with them, and that's where you want us to approve. But the other areas you looked at, which are all listed in section 3 of exhibit 7, for the most part, you had no response. So you couldn't even approach them because you got no response from them at all, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to present here today?
So going back to Exhibit 7, those people who did respond, you included notes as to the nature of their response.
That's correct.
And then Exhibit 8, what does that reflect?
These are the certified mailers that were sent out to the existing tower owners within the area requested by the county commissioners.
I want to go to your contact with the subcarrier tower, the tower that's been vacant for 30 years.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you did after the last hearing relative to that tower, what your investigation was and what you found?
After that, the last meeting, we contacted subcarrier again and asked them for existing tower information again, which we had asked previously. And they indicated, the tower owner indicated they do not have any records of the structural makeup of the tower or the foundations. And if we were gonna do a structural evaluation, it would require a full tower mapping, including foundation mapping, to determine the size of each member of the tower and the size of the anchors.
Do you have an understanding as to the age of that tower?
I do not recall, but it's mid-80s, I believe.
Do you have an understanding as to how long it's been vacant?
According to the tower owner, they indicated they had not had a tenant on it since they purchased it in '93.
Tell me about the ODOT property. Did you make any contacts with the Ohio Department of Transportation during your initial search?
During the initial search, I did not.
Why?
Because the ODOT property that was questioned by the commissioners was not within our defined search ring.
How far outside the search ring is it, do you know?
I would, half mile, almost, 3/4.
Okay. And following our last hearing, did you make contact with the Ohio Department of Transportation?
I attempted to make contact with the Ohio Department of Transportation, did not receive a call back. So Tag Towers, I reached out to them, they reached out to another gentleman that does site acquisition for them. And he indicated he had been working on an ODOT site for the most part of the year. I think he first contacted them in April 2025. And after multiple attempts, he did get a draft lease from the lady who runs that program for ODOT. And after multiple attempts over the last 9 months, he has not made any headway on any lease or even an indication from ODOT that they're willing to lease the property.
And if you reviewed the sworn statement of that site acquisition at tab number 6?
Yes.
And that essentially highlights who you tried to contact?
That's correct.
How did you try and contact that person at ODOT?
I tried to contact Wendy Snyder at ODOT by email and by voicemail on her cell phone that I've received from James. And I contacted her on a daily basis for the last 2 weeks and emailed her every 3 days.
Okay, and who's James?
James is the other site acquisition agent that had a previous relationship with Wendy Snyder.
When you say you tried to contact them, you actually called her on her cell phone
Yes,
and you left a message, she didn't take up the call and she didn't call you back.
that's correct.
And you also tried to contact her through emailing to her email address.
Yes, sir.
You didn't get a bounce back, it actually was delivered,
Yes,
and you had no response from her.
correct.
And you've done that for the prior 2 weeks.
Yes, once I got her name.
Okay, and with regard to your other contacts with ODOT, you got no response from any of those?
From the original contact, I got nobody to call me back.
And the ODOT lease possibility where you actually had contact for 9 months has not resulted in a successful approval.
Correct. If you look at the written statement that James submitted in section 6, it kind of does a professional assessment and lets you know the situation with ODOT and what their reaction to these requests is typically.
Have you ever had a site in Ohio where you've used an ODOT site?
I have not personally, no.
No, I'm asking Verizon. Has Verizon ever used an ODOT site in Ohio?
I am not aware of one, but I do
Was
not
that a
know.
question that you might have asked? Because what I would have done if I were you, I'd have wondered in my organization, Verizon, whether they'd ever actually successfully dealt with ODOT and found that out and then gone to that ODOT person as opposed to Wendy, I don't know.
My understanding, I can answer that because I asked the question when we got back after the last hearing. Verizon tries to avoid ODOT sites because they're very cumbersome, they take a long time to do, and ODOT is generally non-responsive.
Okay, so that's
I
interesting.
did not ask for the name of the individual who administers their
No,
sites.
but my question was slightly different, and that is whether or not, I get the fact that ODOT appears to be difficult, but I was wondering if you ever successfully cited on a Verizon, tower or cohabitated on another person's tower site on ODOT property. That's my question. Has it ever occurred? And then my question would be, if that's occurred, why don't we go to them because you succeeded? And I guess you don't really know whether that ever happened. Whether there's ever been a Verizon cell tower or a tower that you're using that's on ODOT property. You don't know that.
Correct.
So you got, again, for the record, why don't you guys explain, this is your map, the coverage. So I think at the last hearing, we talked about, even though, again, from a layman's standpoint, I pulled up the Verizon coverage map and it shows this entire area is covered by 5G and it's great, is what, from a marketing perspective, Verizon shows. But you're saying from a RF engineering standpoint, that's not actually the case, and that this is more accurate, correct? You produced this?
I think you have to, again, the RF engineer is here, he's gonna be the next witness, and I think that that's a question you direct to the RF engineer.
All right, well, yeah, I think we should move on and just try to set the table for this. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Morning. Thanks, good to see you again.
Thanks, good to be back.
So if I want to, well, no, it's your witness, go ahead, you want to talk to him?
So Kurt, you prepared RF maps that are at tab 4 in the binder, correct?
Yes.
Would you like to walk through those RF maps?
Starting, this will be your page 1.
And I'll start with Kurt, you weren't the original RF engineer on this project, correct? You sort of inherited it?
Correct.
Okay.
You guys show it? This?
Yeah, we found it,
Okay.
so, which is what I was just holding up. I found that in your original presentation. These are the same maps.
They are the same maps, there's only one addition, that's the ODOT coverage plot. So the first one that says Camp Kern existing coverage, this is the area, I think your previous question, why does this map differ than our marketing maps? This is what we use on the engineering world to determine enhancement, current coverage, and also existing network, and how we plan future coverage enhancements.
And can you define, I'm sorry, but while you're stating that, can you define what is a coverage gap? Is cell phone service not adequate there? Is it during peaks? Is it during a public emergency? Is it for the highway? What is it?
You know, we determined that there's a coverage gap here, both for capacity reasons, the site to the east, and also for coverage. And the site to the east wouldn't be on your map, but it's showing in the green that it does have existing coverage. So it's both, there's a service gap that we have to fill, and that both from the capacity standpoint, that site is overloaded more than our standard of we say like roughly 80%, it's loaded. So it's definitely over 80%. So we're trying to do a capacity offload, and we're also trying to increase coverage that you see, the magenta, and also where there is no coverage, which would be the yellow.
So,
Lower coverage, not no coverage.
so when the purple and the green,
Mhm.
where the green is good in-building coverage and the purple is good outdoor coverage, is it accurate to say that the outdoor coverage also includes the green? In other words, it's better coverage to be outside than to be inside. Would that be right? So that if, in actual fact, the area that says good in-building coverage, that is also good outdoor coverage too. Would that be right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
But most people use their phones inside.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying that as a general rule, if you're outside, you get better coverage than inside. The buildings themselves can inhibit,
Correct.
okay? So wherever it says in-building coverage, that's also outdoor coverage. So in fact, the only thing on these maps that there's no coverage in is in actuality the white areas.
Yeah, lower coverage.
And so what you're really telling us to do with each of these maps is you're trying to fill in the white areas.
We're trying to fill in the white areas,
That's right. That's
enhance
what
the
I'm
purple
asking.
areas, and
Well,
improve
the
the
purple
green.
areas are good outdoor coverage, and that's gonna be both the purple and the green. So really, all you're communicating with these maps is trying to extend either capacity and coverage to the white areas.
And the green areas, because a capacity offload, you have to have coverage to offload. So the green and the purple areas are currently covered.
Yeah,
So
because
we have a site, and we're trying to improve
But
the
if you've got,
capacity offload. Okay, sorry.
okay, but I'm trying to focus on something different.
Okay, sorry. go
Because
ahead.
I thought you said that good in-building coverage in the green is also gonna be good outdoor coverage. The areas, and of course, I guess what you're saying is in the purple areas, they're just purple, there is not necessarily good indoor, in-building coverage in the purple areas, right? Is that what you're
Correct.
communicating? But there is, in the purple and the green areas, there is good outdoor coverage.
Correct.
Okay, and the white areas have no coverage at all,
They have lower
lower
than
coverage.
optimal
They're not as
coverage.
fast, is that right?
Correct, not as fast, intermittent, yeah.
Okay.
All right, so that, go ahead.
So can we look at the Camp Kern coverage then? And I'd like to compare that to the existing coverage and what that does and what the coverage objectives are there.
Well, the coverage objectives are to make the purple and green areas better and to offload capacity-wise the site to the east. So to increase the green and purple areas and also to enhance the green and purple areas.
And specifically, in what areas are you looking to improve?
Well, the areas that are shown here, the areas that are green, purple, and not covered.
And you don't have this to display for the public anywhere?
If you, we can pull up the old map, we're looking at the old maps right now. I can go to that if you want.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
You guys all right with that? Okay, this is, can you guys see that? Okay, it's a little lag. So this was the area that the, see my first one. This is what we were looking at, the first slide. And then here is the enhancement we get from our proposed Camp Kern site.
Okay, and again, you were 100% a straight shooter with this before. So if you go back to the previous slide, that's the existing coverage. So even though people say, oh, my cell phone works fine now, you're saying there are some people, because obviously to the right, the windy area, that is the Little Miami River. It's, from a topography standpoint, a lot lower than any tower that you would put in. So and that's common, right? You're gonna get worse coverage in valleys.
Right, you get line of sight.
Yeah.
So if your line of sight goes away from, you can't see the tower, you're not gonna get as good RF coverage.
Right, but from an RF engineering standpoint, you're trying to cover, for the most part, the ground that you can, especially where people are. And so you're saying there's actually some white, and I think that's where Commissioner Grossman was going. In your existing coverage, there's some white area, which are the real problematic areas.
Well, there's two problems, right? There's the capacity problem, which are the green and purple areas that we currently cover. And there's also the areas that we don't cover as well, which would be the white.
So you're defining green as a problem area?
As a capacity offload, it's a coverage objective, right? To the green area we currently cover, we currently have customers on it, they're using their devices. We determined that there's a capacity need, there's too many users in the green and purple areas, in some of those, to the site to the east. So we're trying to offload, get some, take away, pull back the coverage here so that a current, additional site can offload that.
So, again, is green bad?
No, green's good.
In fact, everything would be green if you took away the purple. The purple is also green, correct?
No,
No?
no. The
I'm
green is
sorry,
also purple.
Exactly, I stand corrected. The green is in building, but the purple would be everywhere it's green as well, because that's outside coverage. And the outside is always better than inside, and therefore, the entire map would be purple on all these things except for the white areas.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so
So-
I'm gonna,
Well, again, this is where, Bruce, why don't you tell us, under the law, what are we considering here? What are we allowed to take into determination of whether we grant this or not? What should we be considering?
You should be looking at the factors in section 3.205.7, which are the use standards that are applicable, and then you should be looking at the review criteria in section 1.303.6 for site plan review.
I don't,
Is that spelled out for us somewhere?
And you don't have to make a decision. Of course, you also have a room for, I expect, opponents that want to testify.
yeah,
You can take this under advisement and deliberate in private once all the evidence has been submitted.
well, and I wanna spend, I'm not gonna be prepared to make a decision today because of this. I want some time to review these materials, but I do wanna make sure that you all get into evidence, everything you want to get into evidence. And then I want to allow for some time for those residents impacted by this to speak briefly to this. Because we're just running long on time, but, so if we could just, any other evidence you want us to consider, we want to make sure we're getting.
I would like Kurt to be able to talk about the ODOT site versus the subcarrier site and how those sites do or don't fulfill Verizon's coverage objectives.
So if you turn the page to the ODOT site, ODOT 250, and it's dated April 26th.
The ODOT 250?
Yes, sir. This is the best guess location. We don't have a confirmed search area. This is the best that real estate could find. They thought this would be the place, if we built the site, we could build it. So I put this in a map at 245-foot rad center, 250-foot tower, and that is the coverage you get. And you can see that compared to the Camp Kern site, we lose coverage both to the west, because we're moving the site to the east. We're gonna lose coverage to the west, but we also gain in the valley, so the valley coverage is better. Those are really the takeaways from the ODOT site. We would still need an additional site if we built the ODOT site, which is the same problem we have with the subcarrier site.
Kurt, while you're on this subject, just briefly, so again, we have existing coverage, as I'm holding up your existing coverage map with
Yep.
a substantial amount of purple and some white even away from the river. Then you go over to your next page is Camp Kern at 245 feet center line, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is 1105 Camp Nixon Road, correct? That's where you're under contract.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, and then you show a coverage map where the white is essentially all gone away from the river. There's still some along the river, even with that site, but for the most part, the white is gone, and most of the purple is gone, but there is still some purple, what I'll call kind of the middle of the land, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then, okay, ODOT, it is what it is, we see that. But on reference number 5, John Pulaski site, which is, that, just so we understand, that's where the existing outdoor tower is that's outdated, correct?
Yeah.
Can you say yes?
Yes.
Thank you. And from an RF engineering standpoint, again, I haven't studied this, but that looks like a better map outcome, except along the river. It's still problematic along the river, maybe even more problematic, but for the land area, that seems to be even better than the 1105 Nixon Camp Road site. Would you agree with that? I mean, it looks like it.
No, I would disagree, simply because we do lose coverage to the east. By moving the site to the subcarrier site to the west, we lose about a mile. We do lose significant coverage. What I think is significant, and then the board can not view as significant. Significant coverage to the east.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, the goal is to enhance, like you said, to get rid of the wide areas as much as we can. And
Well, you've done that.
Everybody's come up all day. Can you come up and point to me, or just, again, try to convince me of what exactly you're talking about? Because we're down to 2 maps here. That, so that's your proposed site, right?
yeah, this is the proposed, this is the first. Better, and then you can see how the wide
So, so you're saying this is better because of this versus all of that, and I'm saying, look at all of that.
Okay.
Doesn't, I mean, is that not a reasonable?
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can argue that, but I would argue that getting this area also is important too.
Well, what I think what Commissioner Young is saying is that you have great improvement in this area with that map. See, there's no white in the Pulaski map, and there is way less purple, which is also problematic. So you've improved that area as opposed to your suggested one where you have very similar, kind of, but you've improved the purple area, which is so that's a good outdoor coverage only. But so you just made a trade-off, right? You've just made a trade-off there. You've gotten, Pulaski's better over here, and the Camp Kern one that you want to use is better in some areas, but both of them still have a lot of white area in the river valley area. And by the way, do you get a lot of Verizon customers complaining because they're kayaking or canoeing on that river about their coverage? Is that a problem? You get complaints about that?
I haven't heard any complaints.
Okay.
Kurt, what is the real coverage objective though, to resolve here?
Well, there's the tower, there's a little dot here, that's our tower we're trying to offload. And then we're also trying to enhance the coverage along the river valley. That was a part of the criteria that we had.
Mr. Grossman, could you turn your microphone on?
Is it not on?
Is it not on? It's on.
They're all in red.
And your position then is that the Camp Kern satisfies that coverage objective?
It satisfies both the capacity and the coverage enhancement, yeah.
Although there's an argument to be made that the existing tower site,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the board has noted that it does cover better to the east, which makes sense, because the site is further east.
right, there's no.
Where we have our.
Essentially what you're saying from an engineering standpoint, there is no perfect site right this
Is
second.
that east or west?
That's east, this is west.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
All right, that helps me. Thank you. We're on the same page relative to the maps.
Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Anything else you want to get into the record here before I?
No, the last thing that did just occur to me, and I don't want to blindside anyone, but I think, my understanding is the application was filed in November, and we've kind of blown the federal shot clock in terms of the approval timeline.
Is there some sort of limitation period?
No, not in our plan. Under federal law, there's a 90-day shot clock.
Okay, what does that mean? There's a federal law that requires us, once you make application, to rule on your application?
Yes.
What's the US code section?
I don't have it now, I can submit it, but I just wanted to raise it now so.
Okay, well, I'm pretty familiar with the US code, even though it's like huge, but it would be nice if we had the code section, thank you.
Okay, great. So is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the location?
One at a
of the
time.
Proposed. Okay, seeing none, we will entertain anyone who wants to speak as an opponent of the site. I just want to let folks know that there are two specific pieces of information that we need those to respond to. The board will need to hear what is the distance of your property from the proposed cell tower site, and secondly, what unique harm you will suffer if the site plan is approved. Unique harm does not mean how it affects the neighborhood, but rather your specific property. So, and then for everyone who testifies, we will allow the applicant an opportunity to cross-examine or question each witness. So, with that, is there anybody who wishes to testify in opposition? Just come on forward. And if you could, I will need each of you to state your name and address for the record and affirm that you have been sworn in.
Timothy Michael Kirby, 1087 South Nixon Camp, Oregon, Ohio, and I have been sworn in.
Okay, great.
Robert Eric Bednar, 1029 South Nixon Camp, and I have been sworn in.
Great, thank you.
Now, we do have a slideshow presentation that we would like to
And that's this
show you
right
guys.
here.
Exactly. But I do have a couple of things that I wanted to bring up, you know, in listening to the talks this morning, that I want to make you guys and the commissioners aware. They said the tower's been vacant for 30 years. So while you guys were discussing, I emailed my contact at Subcarriers. That tower, and I have it in email, has been vacant since May of 2019. They said it's not been inspected. I have it in an email. It is assessed, it's assessed and checked on every 2 years. There's been no major issues with the tower. That tower, just for sake of no confusion is the tower, number 5, number 2. It's the tower located at 3859 State Route 350.
Was
And
the tower used by another cell carrier?
at some point in time it was.
Was it used for you, but you mentioned that you called them up and it was vacated. What was on it that was vacated?
I couldn't tell you. I'm not a cell carrier company. In January, when we were here for our first meeting, we left here. Your guys' major concerns were co-location. And if you'll start the slideshow, Bob, okay. In January, I started making phone calls. And I was able to reach 4 carriers. The one at the 3859, State Route 350. The one at 6371 Wilmington Road.
I'm sorry, so what is the, okay, just so we're all keeping the
Yeah.
same thing. So what I call the existing outdated tower, I call, but
Yeah.
maybe not that.
Sheerhaven is what we call it.
What is that address or?
3859 State Route 350.
And that is in which area?
That is the one on
Circle?
350 that has been,
Okay, but is that in the circle or is it in a quadrangle?
well, we haven't seen any of the information that they presented today, because it was all in pamphlet to you guys with no presentation to us. Can't tell you if it's in the circuit, quadrant.
It's this one, it's the main one we're talking about.
It's the same one you guys have been discussing.
It's that,
Okay,
the existing tower.
well, that's just a different address, I guess.
Right, right.
Okay.
That's why I'm like,
You're not good with
That's why I
maps.
tried to,
All right, this is
Is this the one we're talking
350.
if it's just the same one we've been talking about, which is identified with a different address, and I know where it appears.
It's the one as you leave Flying J going towards the river on the right-hand side there behind Sheerhaven, the old dog grooming place. At the same time, I made contact with the initial tower number 3, which has been changed 12 different times. That address was 6371 Wilmington Road, and that's at the I-71 ramp. I also made contact with tower number 1, which is 329 South Nixon Camp Road. That is across the highway. And I also made contact with tower number 6, 6925 Ordonia Road. All 4 towers have availability, and the towers range from 350 feet on down.
Have
I
you looked at, maybe you haven't seen this, but have you looked at their search areas? They had a search area, that was in our exhibits today.
These tower numbers all came from the initial presentation where they located towers and said, hey, will any of these work? So I just started reaching out to the tower companies and making phone calls. I had, one day I spent just calling tower companies and emailing.
Here's what I don't know. I don't know how these tower locations, which I think you're saying, are available.
Mhm.
And I don't know how they fulfill their coverage and or their capacity.
They're the same
needs.
tower locations that they presented the first time we were here. We went directly off of Ray's map where he had all the dots and numbers, and we used their numbers, the initial numbers, not before they changed. And,
So what
yeah,
you're saying is, I'm referring to your PowerPoint.
Okay.
Tower number 2,
Mhm.
tower number 3,
Yep.
tower number 1, and tower number 6 are all available for them to
yes,
stay on.
they all have availability on them.
Okay, and so the question then would be, do these meet their coverage and capacity needs?
I can't answer that.
No, I know. That would
Okay,
be
I
my
was
question.
also able to reach out and speak with ODOT direct. I spoke with them, I spoke with someone at ODOT, and then they put me in contact with the telecommunications
Is her
people.
name Wendy?
I don't know what the name was. They called me, I was on a business trip in Chicago.
I feel like you should be in the tower sighting business. I mean,
Actually, you should be in their communication
Yeah.
department.
So they did call me back, and there is availability there. However, they said there wasn't a whole lot they could help me with. So by that time, I already had 4 other towers that say, hey, we're available, and they're the closest towers to the
What
site.
do you mean that ODOT, with the ODOT people you got?
There's certain restrictions, from what I understand, that the cell tower communication has to be so many feet above or below, the communication for the ODOT site. I don't know. Again, I'm not a engineer for cell towers
Well,
or
tell you what,
communication
could you-
towers.
Could you provide us with the contact information you had with ODOT?
I can try. I can't swear, like I said, I was
No, no,
on
no.
vacation.
All I'm asking you to do, since you say you've got contact with them, is provide us with the person's name, number, how you manage to do it, just give us that information, that's all.
I will do my best. Again, they called me while I was on a trip to Chicago, and we
They
spoke.
actually called you back?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, that's amazing, okay, that's good, thank you.
So, anywho, next slide here. I want to go fast, because I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch. All right. We went over the tower locations. Obviously, so, the next slide is straight from Verizon's website. It shows coverage. We went over that before.
Yeah, I was
I mean-
just gonna ask, is this different from the last
It
hearing?
is not, but if you look, it don't show 0 coverage, it shows 4G coverage. So there is coverage down in the river valley.
Well, you know, I asked them whether they'd ever gotten complaints in that area, but.
Well, next
Okay, that
video.
doesn't mean, because they're the experts on this.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. Go ahead. All right, so this is the Verizon commercial. Can you turn the volume up? This is straight from Verizon's website.
No, we don't have any.
Don't have volume, huh?
The whole lot.
Okay. So essentially,
Go ahead and summarize it, Mike.
essentially, they're going all satellite. You know, this is where they're showing satellite coverage. Verizon's already said 2026, we're going satellite. There'll be 0 need for a cell tower if they go satellite. You know, I'm not an engineer again, but
Well, we'll ask
that's
that
to the
question.
public saying that they have 0 dead zones via satellite.
Years ago, we conquered the moon. Now Verizon is conquering dead zones in satellite.
Right, we get it.
Yeah.
What they're showing as their coverage versus this, but
100%.
again, as, under the law, we're trying to narrow this to what is affecting you.
I
And
understand.
Which is the
We've got this presentation, so we wanted to make sure you guys were aware of all the facts.
Yeah, well,
The next video, we won't play it. You're welcome to play it in your own.
Yeah.
This is me driving around the country in my pickup truck, down at the bottom of the hill, up at the top of the other hill, down the road. And I state where I'm at, and I'm calling Miss Bednar on the phone saying, hey, can you hear me now? You know, we're doing a Verizon commercial from 1993. Yeah,
Are you a Verizon customer?
I am. And this is for Miss Jones. You had stated in the first meeting we had that you were a little concerned with the drop coverage there on I-71. These high voltage lines are known to cause cell drops, and right where you were talking about there are high voltage lines. This was just for you, for your reassurance that there's not cell problem out there. All right, this map is the map that they presented in red, showing all the local residents and how close they were. However, what they left off was all the yellow, which is all the houses closest to the cell tower location. You guys asked how close our house was to it. It's 250 feet from my property line. It's 450 feet from my house. It is 600 feet from my other property on the bottom side there. Mr. Bednar's house is 600 feet, and then Rusty Early's place is 1,000 feet, and many of these other neighbors here, all your guys' houses are on there.
Can you provide us with the distances and to the property, the individual homeowners that are like a legend for this?
So, for example, the one that says 450 feet there in yellow, that would be my house. Is that what you're asking for? Some kind of documentation, how far away we are?
Yeah, just like a legend, like the
Okay,
address.
that's fine.
Be provided after the meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And I can simply handwrite that down. It's easy to do.
That would be great. And then
But
we'll
I'm just
take
wanting to show you, you know, they stated the red, but they left out all the yellow. So I want to make sure you guys are aware of how this affects our community.
Well, is it the distance? You're showing us the distance to each one of these residences.
Yes.
Is it, are you saying that the closer you are to the cell tower, it enhances the issues or the damage to you, or?
I cannot speak on health concerns because even if we do, it's not considered.
Well, I'm not talking about health, I'm talking about the criteria, or I wanna understand how you're.
The closer you are to the property, the more the tower devalues your property. It's known fact it can devalue your property 5 to 25%. If I lose 25% of my value, that takes at least $150,000 out of my pocket. If our community as a whole, just our street, loses 5% of our property values, that's $762,000 us as residents lose on our property value for a cell tower that pays $500,000 over 50 years. We take a hit, they get paid next to nothing, and we get stuck with the eyesore.
So you have some evidence that cell tower placement impacts real property value?
100%.
It's been widely touted by the American Association of Realtors. I can get some information on that, but my sister is a realtor. She no longer, she doesn't work in Ohio any longer, but she of course is a member of the association and is quite familiar with how a cell tower structure, and I'm sure there's probably little argument on that it is going to depress property values.
Let's go to the next slide. So when they're pulling permit, not only is the address wrong, not only is it called Camp Kern, there's all these different things that are not correct. This is in their own presentation right here. It says rural residential, 5-acre density to the north, south, east, and west. 100% false. This is the true map from GIS. If you look, I have 5.01 acres. Mr. and Mrs. Bednar have 9.99. The 36.54 is owned by Mark Leisure. And then if you look to the south there, there's a 0.69 acre lot. That's not 5 acres. I own that. If you look to the south there, there's 2.153 acre lot. That's owned by Tom and Irma, not 5 acres. There's a 0.524 acre lot, and then there's a 0.942 acre lot, which happens to be owned by Mrs.
So
Glancy.
your point is, this is not just rural 5-acre lots.
It is not.
It's suburban,
Well,
smaller lots.
the next slide. Here's the next slide. Everything to the south there is considered Shady Wood Acres subdivision. This is straight from the Warren County mapping department.
But it's not yet built on?
Oh, it's all built. There's houses there.
Okay.
This was developed in 1959.
And the lot sizes?
They all vary because it's tapered.
Well, but they're all pretty similar.
Well, they are simple, and then they wrap around the corner there and come on to 350 as well.
And you're saying each one of those has a house on
Yeah, well, I think there's 2 lots that are empty along there, maybe 2 or 3, but yes, for the most part, they all have houses. And this is straight from Josh Moyer. He's the Warren County Technical Services. We wanted to call and make sure there was no problems with the communication to 911, and there was not.
And this is something I would like to speak on, which directly is pertinent to the zoning code, 3.205.7. It's one of the things that you said that is definitely a consideration. And that code, I copied a portion of it here, which says that on setbacks, section 5, the setback distance from the center of the tower to an adjacent property shall be equal to the tower height. But that's all the Warren County Code really says. And I am not a good old boy like, like Mike. I am a software engineer by trade, and I'm a stickler on details. And I figured, if they said it had to be 75% of the height, that would be something, or if it had to be 80% of the height, but it says it has to be equal to 100% of the height of the tower. So my question is, what is the height of the tower? And when I look at that section on TAG, how they inserted it, how they filed it, they indicate that the overall structure height is 254 feet. Now, the tower itself is, we understand, is 250 feet tall with a 4-foot lightning rod arrestor on it. And it doesn't say, it's like, okay, does the lightning rod arrestor count or doesn't it? And it doesn't actually say in the Warren County Code. So I went to some of our friends, like Butler County. And Butler County defines the cell tower height as the vertical distance from the ground level to the highest point on the structure, including any antenna or appurtenance attached to it, where an appurtenance is anything that's permanently attached or affixed to the structure. I looked at Clinton County, and based on the Clinton County zoning resolution, 2025, and related Ohio Revised Code, the tower height is generally defined as the total vertical distance measured from the finished grade adjacent to the base of the structure to the topmost point. I looked at Greene County, our friends to the north. Height for a tower or other structure is defined as the vertical distance measured from the ground level to the highest point on the tower or structure, even if that highest point is an antenna or lightning rod. And it comes from Article 21, where they actually have a definition of the word height. What does height mean? And it indicates that it includes the lightning rod.
So is your point then, if we are to interpret it the way that the other counties interpret it?
And you cannot.
But
But their own evidence submitted from their own slides, it says the applicant provides documentation of the cell tower's fall zone radius and that the tower and lightning arrestor are designed to fall within the subject property. I believe that this says that they should have created a fall zone of 254 feet. And they only created a fall zone of 250 feet. Now, I will say that sure, maybe a tower doesn't tend to fall straight down. If it did, that would actually fall, the lightning arrestor would hit Kirby's property and probably take out part of his barn that he has
Are
to
you
use.
saying that their tower is too tall for the appropriate regulations because the fall zone can't fall on somebody else's property?
Yes, the code says that it has to
And
be,
they've only got a 250-foot fall zone, but that little lightning rod takes them above it and might hit somebody else's property.
technically, yes, it
So
is a
your argument
technicality.
is that they can't site it there because of the fall zone problem.
Yes, they did
And that's a
not,
violation of our, of regulation of zoning laws?
it is. I believe it is. We would be unique if we did not include it. And the reason I think they do it is they try to get around, it's like, hey, can I build a 6-foot tall tower in my property? No one's gonna say anything. I wanna put a 300-foot tall lightning rod on top of it. Now we got a problem. So, companies have tried other tactics, like what if we put a big mound of dirt on the property and then put the tower on top of that? It's like, no, other counties' code, make sure that it's the previously existing ground level is what you're counting on. So we're really looking for the total height of the tower, which should include the lightning rod. They didn't, for people that are, I'm sure you're all well enough at geometry, that the area of the circle is gonna be pi r squared. And if you work it out and you say, well, I have a 250-foot circle versus a 254-foot circle, you're short over 6,000 square feet. So they did not see to it that they actually acquired a large enough lease on the property to adequately protect Mike and be a safe distance from his property, so that if it were to, I didn't make the rule on what the fall zone should be. But I would think that, I'm really concerned that the company, they said, hey, we're not gonna notify any of the neighbors that this is going on, because we will stipulate that we will meet all the zoning requirements. And then they showed up, and they didn't do their due diligence. They contacted, yes, there's the smallest tower. It's a very tiny tower. We only reached out to that one that one won't do. We didn't look at any of the other ones. And I think that and we're gonna continue to call this Camp Kern, but we're over a half a mile away from Camp Kern. Really, this is Shady Wood.
Continue to call it Lebanon, Ohio, when in actuality it's Orgonia.
But it's a moot point, but I think the whole idea was that they thought that they would come in here, the neighbors wouldn't know, and that they would try to pull a fast one on you and get you to rubber stamp it. That's just how it appears to me, because they didn't acknowledge, they didn't inform the neighbors, and then they said, well, we're gonna meet all the stipulations.
In reality,
And were you looking for that 254-foot variance in what they did? Now, I'm not sure why they put it right there. Could they move the tower over another 4 feet? Maybe, I don't know.
but in reality, you have all of these neighbors, plus every neighbor I asked signed the petition opposed to the tower. There's a location on 350 that even the RF engineer stated will do 80–90% of the coverage. They keep asking for coverage at the bottom of the river when there is coverage down there, and there's zero population down there. You know, why are we as residents supposed to take a financial hit, as well as, you know, there could be health risks that we're not, 100% certain of because the code is so old.
Yeah, I really do believe that there's a problem with the setback, that they did meet.
They hear
the law.
Yeah, you made that point.
you. We hear you.
Okay.
And then you've got a petition you have signed by a bunch
Yes,
of people.
right there's the petition.
You
Madam
were given
Chairman.
copies of that.
You were given hard copies of that as well.
It's in this.
Package.
You've got
Petition
them.
signed by
I'm assuming these are signed by a whole bunch of neighbors in the
Yes,
area?
yes.
And they're saying that they don't want this tower.
100% they
That's
are
the point
opposed
of
to
the
it.
petition?
What's that?
That's the point of the petition?
Yes.
You're just telling us about all the people that disapprove.
Yes,
of this.
every neighbor couldn't attend. Some of them's on vacation today, some of them are ill. You know,
And so, I had asked, and I hear that you'll provide from your map, the distances, and then the harm, the individual harm. You started to talk about some, calculation based on the National Association of Realtors and so forth. Because what we are looking to consider is, or what we can consider, I guess, is the unique harm to the individual property owners, not sort of the overall neighborhood. And so I think on that additional information that you're gonna provide, to be able to quantify how you're interpreting the individual neighbors are interpreting their specific harm.
so would you like documentation from each and every neighbor? Because I will go up and down the street and have every neighbor fill out that and get you that information if that's what you require.
Before we do that, because I'm not sure that evidence is properly authenticated and for us to document that.
That is correct. So number one, I've heard twice, someone say they're gonna provide something after today. Therefore, this hearing cannot be closed if you're going to allow that. Number two, you're gonna have to give Mr. Carter the opportunity to object to this petition, which is hearsay. And if he does, then it's not admissible. And number three, in all fairness to our residents, under Alisi versus Warren County Board of Commissioners versus Pilot Flying J Trucking's top decision out of the 12th Appellate District, that is binding. Unless these people come here and testify, they have no standing if they plan on going to court to appeal or file an administrative appeal of any decision that this board should make.
And so to interpret this, each individual who claims harm must actually testify to that. And the petition itself is inadmissible evidence. And for us to consider this in our determination, We must have actual witnesses who can testify to actual harm for which they have personal knowledge. Otherwise, it's not admissible evidence and we can't consider it.
Are they allowed to speak today?
Yeah, they are, and unfortunately, we're running out of time today, and look, our president is in charge of conducting this meeting, but you understand that unfortunately, and I know how many times y'all have come to this, and I know how much of an imposition it's to you, but we want to get this right, and we want to have a record, because if we deny this, they're gonna challenge this, and they have a right to do that. And so we've got to document your evidence properly. And if we're gonna consider it, it's got to actually be evidence, because we're acting as a judicial function with proper evidentiary rules. And it's not just simple to throw a petition at us or to make a statement about how you've gone to Google and found out some generalized information about impact upon property values. I don't believe that fulfills your burden.
Okay.
Let me also add that Warren County does have a definition of telecommunication facility and tower in its code. So you can rely on that for this argument about failure to comply with the fall zone requirement. And then one additional thing, and maybe Mr. Carter can address it, and that is, I'm finding section 332C7B related to the shot clock being applicable. And it says a reasonable time for action in case of a new tower, I assume this is a new tower, is 150 days. Or there's a 90-day shot clock for installation of an existing structure, so I don't think that's applicable. So I think it's 150, and the clerk tells me that this petition was filed 11/26/25. So we're running up on that.
But what, Mr. Gary, what is the meaning of that federal code section? Is it a mandatory requirement that we meet it? What's the consequence of not meeting that deadline? Frequently these kind of deadlines are not mandatory, and there's not some, so the real question I've got is, if we don't comply with that, does that mean they have an automatic approval? That's my question.
It may very well, I can't answer
Okay,
that.
and that's the problem with this. If that deadline means, and we do not rule on it, that they automatically get approval, we need to know that. Because that would be how this might work, that they get automatic approval if we've not ruled on it otherwise.
And so that's in 2 weeks or so, April 25th. And so our next meeting is April 21st.
Okay, I would like to know the answer to the question of, if we've not ruled on it, they get automatic approval. I'd like to know that that's how this operates. Because that means that we've got to get this quickly, and that means, to the extent that you need to fulfill your proper evidentiary burden that we can actually consider, we've got to have that nailed down. And I'd like you maybe to consult with our lawyer to maybe he can tell you how you would have to meet that burden, because I believe, I'm a lawyer, I don't think you've done that today. I'm not being contrary to you, but I'm concerned about the quality of your evidence and whether or not we can consider it. And we must have evidence to consider to deny this. I mean, we've already raised a lot of questions, as you know.
I mean, the fact that they lied under oath and said
Well, I
30
don't
years.
think no, I don't think that they've lied under oath.
Yeah, I really appreciate the commission's work. If you said there was some additional information on the setback requirement, because the tower is only set back 250 feet from Mike's property. What is the setback requirement?
Also, with regard to the timing, when we're asking the applicant to provide us information to make a proper consideration, and they are not providing that to us, in all of these meetings, because I think there's still some open questions about this.
Yeah, and I think that if that concludes your presentation for the most part.
To speak on what you just said right there, 3.205.7 says that the applicant shall provide documentation of each request and responses when they're reaching out to these cell towers. Have they provided, they said they made phone calls and knocked on doors. How, it wasn't hard to get these cell tower companies for the relocation or co-location.
I know, and we've asked that question, and I think that there's a possibility that this requirement of ruling within a certain period of time may actually be extended when we're seeking more information from the applicant. I just don't know the answer to that question. But I don't want to pass a deadline and find out that we've automatically approved this.
100%.
And so I understand from the clerk that April 25th then would be the 150-day mark. Our next meeting is on April the 21st, so in advance of that. Unless there is some exception in there as we're trying to find information, if there's some latitude there.
Yeah, and it's not information from you all. I mean, you all need to give us evidence that we can consider that's in the proper form.
Okay.
With regard to the applicant is being asked questions to fulfill our need for information from them, and it may be when they've not yet done that completely, that extends to 150 days, but it may not be the case. That may not be true. There may be a sharp deadline on this, and if that sharp deadline means that they get approval because we've not said no, we need to know that, because that's possible.
Well, with them co-locating, does that benefit them at all? The only person it benefits co-locating would be Verizon, correct? Because, I'm bad with names, but the lawyer and the person he's representing, they're a real estate company, correct? They're not a tower company, they're representing a tower company. They make money off the lease. So by them co-locating, do they benefit whatsoever? I mean, what is their drive to co-locate and put forth effort? You know, I put forth effort because it affects my family and my neighbors, so I'm putting forth the
We're
effort.
making them put forth effort. I mean,
Well-
clearly, this has been the third,
We say that.
hearing, and we've asked them to provide information, which they have, and we have asked additional questions. And so, you know, I can't speak to what anybody's motivation is. I have to follow what the law tells me and the information that I'm allowed to consider. And so to try to get us to, we're sensitive to this April 25th date. We don't want to inadvertently enable something to happen without our due diligence. My recommendation is that we continue the hearing to April 21st, and that this would be likely the last time that we can take evidence on this matter, and we will have to deliberate in short order if that April 25th date is a drop-dead date, if you will. And so my recommendation to the board is to continue the hearing, and then offer to you all to make sure you understand what is the information that we can and consider for this decision.
I would maybe give them the opportunity to cross now.
Yeah. So, do you all wish to cross-examine these witnesses? No. Okay.
And by the way, I really appreciate the amount of work you all put into this.
For sure.
I mean, it's really impressive what you've done. And it's not, I mean, none of you are lawyers, but I commend you on your obvious commitment to this. Obviously, you all believe that this adversely impacts you. I understand that. I'm trying to help you make your case, but at the same time, I want to commend the applicant. They've gone back and answered our questions. They've tried to do that. Now, you know, they've received some skepticism from us. We've not just been like flipped over and lied on our backs with them. We've asked them, you can see that we've asked them insightful questions to establish something that we would all rather happen. We would rather that this not be in your neighborhood. We would rather try to find another site that doesn't have the same kind of perceived detriment, whether it really is or not. We'd rather do that. So we're trying to accommodate you, and if it's appropriate, Mr. McGarry, for them to consult with you as to fulfilling their evidentiary burden, I'd invite you to do that if that's appropriate.
It is not.
And this is not, so forget that. It only advises us. But you might want to ask a lawyer these questions. Okay?
So specifically, you guys are looking how it affects us, the distance from our house.
So anybody who wishes to testify can come here and testify on the continued date. They must testify to offer their evidence. The distance from their property from the cell tower site and the unique harm that they will suffer if the site plan is approved. Unique harm does not mean how it affects the neighborhood, but your specific property. So that's,
I do have one question about unique harm because it's been in and out. Can unique harm be the way it affects livestock and everything like that?
No,
Or
that's
can
not a
that be
question you
considered?
can answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Second off,
All right.
Mr. McGarry, would they be able to submit affidavits that we can consider?
No.
Okay, it's gotta be live testimony?
Yes.
Okay, and that's because it has to be subject to cross-examination. And because the applicant has to be able to can't cross-examine, even though an affidavit is evidence, it's not cross-examinable.
Okay.
All right?
I do have one question, and, because you're looking for the distance from the site, and is the site, the Glancy property, or is it the
I
fall
don't
zone
think
of the
I
tower?
can dictate that.
You need to consult legal counsel.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I will entertain a motion to continue this hearing to April the 21st at 9:45 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Thank you once again for being here.
Thank you.
April
Appreciate it.
21st, that's,
I make a motion to adjourn?
before we do that, I would like to bring Adam up so we can discuss the property tax issue that we discussed a couple of weeks ago to see, we just need to provide some direction on here. We're good on time.
Do you want to give me like a 5-minute timeline?
Yep,
sure.
Okay.
Our applicant had one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Could we just mark that, the book where we made the notations?
And submit it
The towers
to
are
us.
as an exhibit?
Bruce, is, that's,
Yes.
yes.
I suggested Mr. Carter.
Okay.
do that.
Thank you.
Yes, sure, thank you. Okay,
Okay, so I'll just give you I know you have a meeting that you intend to be on today already, but I prepared a resolution emailed to all of you 10 days ago, just as consideration. If you're going to make a decision on whether or not to roll back the inside millage of property tax for tax year 2026 to be collected in 2027, and whether or not you want to replace that revenue with a lesser amount of revenue by a small increase in sales tax. So I'll read the title of the resolution, and then I'll read the last paragraph, because that's really sort of the punchline of it all. But the title of the resolution is, what it would do is just get the ball rolling for your office staff to start doing public notices, to start scheduling hearings. But the resolution is a commitment to reduce the overall tax burden of the residents of Warren County by suspending the collection of the county's portion of inside millage of real property taxes in 2027, and replace inside millage real property tax revenue with a lesser amount of sales and use tax revenue. And what you would be doing is just resolve to prepare the Warren County annual tax budget and all future tax budget work sessions with zero collection of inside millage of real property taxes. Again, charged in 26, collected in 27, and authorize the clerk of the county commissioners and the county administrator to begin the process for public hearings to consider whether or not you want to do a 0.5% increase in retail sales and use taxes.
The net result of that is a reduction of the net amount of general tax revenue for the county. So just to be clear, you're collecting less taxes overall to the tune of, I believe, I'm not the county auditor, but I believe it's around a $4 million net reduction in revenue. And it reduces the overall tax burden of Warren County residents. And just to keep in mind that, again, sales tax is primarily paid, 60% of all sales tax revenue comes in from non-Warren County residents because of the nature of the retail economy we have in Warren County. So that's a sample, sort of a sample draft resolution for you to consider if you want to pass that today. The reason why I'm here today, kind of so quickly from being here 2 weeks ago, is looking at the timelines. If you desire to replace that real property tax revenue with a lesser amount of sales tax, and if you want that income to be received January 27, because typically you're receiving real property tax income right away in February 27, you have to start publishing your public notices May 12th. If you want the sales tax to be effective January, you wouldn't collect it until of 27. You wouldn't collect it until April of 27, meaning that's how long it takes for the tax commissioner to actually start flowing the money. You have until August 11th to act. So your start date to switch the income revenues really close in time, May 12th. Your sort of latest date would be August 11th. But know that you're gonna have 4 months where you're getting less real property tax and you're not getting sales tax. So those timelines have been emailed to you as well.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we approve and start the analysis to do that.
So this is the resolution.
Right, that resolution.
Okay, so the clerk could read the resolution, please.
So I have a resolution committing to reduce the overall tax burden of the residents of Warren County by suspending the collection of the county's portion of inside millage of real property taxes in 2027 and replacing inside millage real property tax revenue with a lesser amount of sales and use tax revenue.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Grossman?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Adam,
Thanks,
for
Adam.
your work
Thank
on
you.
this. I know it was a lot to get this done.
No
but-
problem.
You guys should be clapping right now. You just witnessed something.
So
This is
well,
good.
we still have public hearings on this. There's still a process to go through, but
This is your bonus commissioner time now.
You understand our commitment here. Okay, so with that, if there's no further business today, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
We'll adjourn this meeting and then convene another meeting.
Yes, we have a second meeting at about 12:30, so.
But it's
that we're
not
gonna
here.
do. It's not here.
Second.
And yes, thank you all very much for your patience today.
Thank